are the Lit Ladies.
I'm Christy.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Carissa.
Three writers and moms exploring how to live out our faith in our literary lives.
We span the country from the coast to the Midwest. And with different stages of life, careers, and favorite genres, we're sure to cover the literary landscape.
In every episode, we'll discuss books we love, reading life, and writing craft, using the Bible as our guide for beauty, goodness, and truth. New episodes drop every other Friday.
Hello and welcome back to the Lit Ladies podcast. As always, we are so glad that you are joining us today. And today we are discussing one of our very favorite topics, love tropes. It's February. It's the month of love. We're talking through the nitty-gritty with some of our favorite tropes, what we like, what we hate, everything in between. So again, welcome, and we'll go ahead and get started. So to start, let's define what a trope is. Christy and Carissa, do either of you have a good working definition of what a romance trope is?
Well, a trope, another more Englishy class sounding word, would be a convention. But it's just a type of story or situation or character that's just often seen in stories. And that's not like an official definition. That's just from my own brain. So if you guys have anything to add.
Well, I think that if you were to look at definitions, they are common plot devices, themes, or character types that recur in romance novels, films, and TV shows. That's off of a random website I'll link at the bottom of the show notes. But another website says a trope is a plot structure, theme, storyline, character trait, motif, or plot device that's commonly used in storytelling.
I don't know about theme. That's not really... doesn't really go with the ones we talked about, at least. Yeah.
No, and I think we're really talking about tropes in romance stories. I think you probably have a whole lot of tropes, in different genres, but I had been writing for a long time before I realized that these tropes existed, and I find I like the stories with tropes because you kind of know what's going to happen, and then you read the stories to figure out a different bend on them. So, for example, generally if you pick up a romance book and it's an enemies to lovers book, you know they're going to start out as enemies, and through the course of the story they're going to have obstacles and tension, and at the end they're going to be in love. And I think that's a very common trope, but it can be done 1,000 different ways, and that's what makes the trope unique.
Well, I think some people get down on tropes, too, because they think it always means the story is going to be predictable, but you really need tropes. Every story has a trope, but it's when do you use it to your advantage? Because, well, like you said, if a story is described as being like Romeo and Juliet, it's probably going to be enemies to lovers, maybe tragic, I don't know. And so you're picking that up because you expect that, and that's good. It's how you get books to readers who want, the readers who want to read them, but at the same time, you still have to know how to make them not predictable. How do you subvert the trope, and when you know it's a trope?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we're honest, those are probably the books that catch us when the trope is slightly different than what we expected, but still within the boundaries of the overall umbrella of that particular trope. Christy, do you have any thoughts?
I would say that I never thought about tropes when I was writing, or honestly when I was reading, because I don't have that literary mind that dissects. I just prefer to read and be entertained. But looking back, yes, I can see that mine are more, I don't know, probably opposites attract that I write. I really have to actually think about that one.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they're ingrained in us, so you probably knew you knew the tropes, but you didn't think about, oh, I'm going to use this trope. It just was natural.
I think it's one of those things that it's I just write to write and be entertained or whatever and read. And then my daughter brings her English homework. I'm like, oh, I know what this is. This is a trope. This is whatever. I have to actually dissect it because that's what her teacher's asking her to do. And then I have to actually think about it. So it's funny because she'll pick up a book.
You're just not. Yeah. It's just
I don't think about it.
Subconsciously.
Maybe, yes.
Yeah.
I just know it so well. It's natural.
I think it's true, though, and I think that's exactly why we're having the conversation, because they're so common that we find we like them and we gravitate towards them because they're common. And I would actually say a trope is different than a hook. I think of a hook. I was working on a book proposal, and it was important to specify hooks and tropes. So I realized a hook is something that would catch someone's attention. So a hook might be having a character who is a law enforcement agent, or it might be the setting or something that's going to grab the reader's attention. But I'm not sure a hook is the same as a trope, in that a trope is I would say, formula of the plot and characters together.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say the hook is what makes your book probably stand out from the other billion tropes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, although I think hooks are probably pretty common too, but it's kind of like what unique aspect hooks you in, as opposed to the trope, which would be what pieces work together to form this story, what common pieces work together. But let's talk about common romance tropes. Looks like, Carissa, you might have some good common ones to start us off.
Well, there's enemies to lovers, which probably everybody knows now is my favorite. Well, and then there's closely related. There's rivals to lovers, which I like too, which is like they already know each other. Like I think someone's with enemies to lovers, I think they meet in the story. But like rivals, they might have the same job, or like for some reason they're rivals, whatever.
Competing
and then,
for something. Yes.
Yeah, competing. Friends to lovers. So it's kind of like the boy that you like discounted, and then they're like become the best friend or become the lover. Friends to more or whatever. Brother's best friend. Fake dating, which I know is that contentious one that you people either love or hate. Love triangle, also contentious. Marriage of convenience. And then I was looking at some other tropes, and these came up, and I want to see if you agree that they like are tropes or not. Betting, I guess.
Okay, so now that one,
yeah,
that one I was like, what does she mean by betting? When I was like that in the notes, but then I think of the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Yes,
and I'm like, that started with a bet,
and then I was thinking, right, to date make the person fall in love with them?
No, it's the opposite. How to make a guy like ditch you in 10 days, because then she does everything wrong. Right? Isn't that what that one is? Where she's talking about like marriage on like date one and all this kind of stuff. And what was the She's All That? That was a 90s movie where like, and that's almost a trope of like, oh, let me do a makeover, and now you're like irresistible to everybody.
That's one.
But that's kind of like a bet. Yeah. Well, the makeover, but they're also betting too. Like, I bet you can't make this girl dateable kind of thing.
I think it's probably not as common, maybe, because you're
probably
right.
not, because it's probably rude.
Yeah,
but I think it's out there. Devon Daniels wrote a book called the Rom Con, Rom Con, C-O-N. I read it. I can't remember if there was a bet in there, but it had a lot of similarities to How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I don't think it was a clean book, so I should preface with that. But it was good, and I think I would say betting is a trope. Like, you know, there's a bet, whatever it is, and you know at the end in a romance story, the characters are going to fall in love. So whatever the bet entails, it's going to somehow mix up so the end is a love story.
Yes.
Another one is amnesia. I feel like I haven't really seen that done super well in lots of them, but yeah, amnesia was a trope. And then
I
office
read
romance. Yeah. Oh wait, go ahead.
With amnesia, let me get the word out. Memory Lane by Becky Wade. The guy gets in like a boating incident in the beginning of the book, and he kind of has amnesia. And so, of course, she helps him, get back into his life or whatever. But that was a good one. But I feel like sometimes amnesia can be kind of a cheap trick. Especially when I was trying to write about it one of my stories, and I was like Googling all the facts, and it's kind of like, yes, but most of the time it's pretty short lived, and it's not like as intensive as books make it seem, which is fine.
Except for like, what's that one that it was a true story, like The Vow or something. I think I watched the movie. Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
It was a true story. I thought that was Nicholas Sparks.
No, I think it was a true story.
Was it true?
I think so.
I did read One Foggy Christmas by Courtney Keisel. It was like a clean Christmas story, not humorous, had some amnesia in it, and it was really well done. I felt like it showed us why they fell in love, so it was believable that they fell back in love.
That's cute.
Yeah, so I think it's a good trope.
Okay, question for you guys. Do you think touch her and die is a trope? Because, like, you know how you see those, like, images that's, like, pitching a book, and it's like, oh, it's got enemies to lovers, like, I don't know, whatever kind of world, cute dogs, and then it's like, touch her and die, and I'm like, what does that mean? Is that
I don't even know. Since it came from you, I was like, is this like a fantasy thing where it's like a magic you touch her, like prick your finger, Sleeping Beauty, and die, or is it like the older brothers trope where it's like
protective?
You know, like the older brother's friend can't date her because like he'll kill him, you know, that kind of thing. I've seen that, but I don't know what
I think
else.
it would be like, I think, especially in the romantic suspense world, it would be if the hero is protecting the heroine and the bad guy is after her, or an ex-lover, whatever, is after her, he would then be like, you touch her, you die. Like, maybe not those words, but
I'm thinking like it's like that protective, almost like overprotective type situation, maybe.
But here's what I think, Carissa, to answer your question. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's all those Instagram posts that have like the line.
The cute little arrows.
Like, yes. And I've seen those referred to as micro tropes. So if I do a quick Google search of micro tropes, this one definition says the small familiar moments and nuances that give shape to larger tropes and define the genres we know and love.
Only one bed.
I do think only one bed. Yeah, I think those are definitely not micro tropes.
Story structure. It's like the moment.
It's like a part
There's
of
always
the story.
That moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So touch her and die is that moment where you see that the hero cares for the heroine, or what else would be a micro trope? Would be like maybe sunshine, maybe cat lover, maybe like some of these things. Maybe like tattoos. Like Christy just wrote a book that had tattoos on her main character. That might be a micro trope. The tattoo bad boy.
All I can think of is the bed one now. There's this romance bookstore in my hometown. Like, that's the whole store is just romance books. And they have this t-shirt that says, the one bed trope never fails.
Like, I'm going to get that for you. I was just going to say, that's really hard to do in the Christian fiction realm, though. Like, if you just have one bed.
Well, actually, I think you can. It's like non-spicy. It's just like, you know, the tension, right?
The whole pillows in the middle of the bed so you don't touch each other. Somebody takes the floor. Yeah.
Oh, I'm cold.
So funny.
Which leads into one of the ones I like, which is forced proximity, you know, where something keeps the couple like stuck together. And usually I feel like they are either opposites attract or enemies to lovers in that. Like the forced proximity kind of works with that to make them get over their stuff. One of the other tropes, second chance romance, where they have a past. See, I don't love this one, but I feel like this one's been very popular lately, where it's like they have a past, but they didn't get together for some reason, and then they get like a second chance to do it. And we talked to Pepper Basham last week, and one of her favorites was the fish out of water, where you just pluck some character out of the regular world and toss them somewhere completely different and just kind of see what ensues. And I think that one's kind of fun because it has a lot of room for kind of awkward encounters or like funny stuff, hijinks. Yeah, and I guess a comforting factor too, if the guy or girl like, comforts a person out of water.
Like fish out of water, I like that one because it doesn't just have to be romance. I actually hadn't really thought of it within the context of romance. I think of it in the context of most fantasy and sci-fi stories. Use the fish out of water trope. Yeah. To be able to like explain something to that character, so like the reader's learning about the world at the same time as the character. But I like how in this way it's not as functional that way, like it might be, but it's kind of like a character building for that character who's the fish out of water.
Yep, and like we talked about last week with Pepper, you can do a lot with fish out of water, for sure.
And then like
so much variety.
The love interest is like the guide or the.
Yeah, the person who knows the world, whatever that looks like.
And it makes sense. Like, it would happen that way in real life, so.
Yeah, that does make sense. I'm a sucker for the age gap romance. And, okay, but
I thought you liked
no.
Okay, well, Christy, I thought you liked the nanny trope. Like the nanny.
Yeah, but like, no. Okay, look, you can be like 7 to 10 years older. After that, it's weird. After that, you are A, robbing the cradle, or B, you're a cougar. There's only 2 ways that goes. So
I'm only okay with it in like Jane Eyre. Just because it's Jane Eyre. Because she's like 18. I'm pretty sure he's like 40.
No thanks.
I was working on a story kind of based off of Ruth and Boaz, and so I did put an Instagram poll up, and I thought for sure people won't think it's so weird if they're like around 10 years. No, it was very clear people wanted like 5 years or less in their age gap.
So, I remember talking about that.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought people would be more okay with it, but apparently not.
No, Kylie wrote about one. I don't think she ever got off the ground with it, but it was like the father dies and his best friend, so you're assuming his age, falls in love with a daughter. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. No, it's gross.
Maybe if she's a little older and that guy's a little younger.
Maybe that would work.
Yeah,
I mean, he's talking about his knees. I'm like, okay, I need some functional knees. Like,
I guess I'm used to that sort of an age gap because of like classic novels. The guy is almost always older.
Of course,
yeah,
of course it was. Works out for them, great.
I mean, yeah, I know. It's like, which is like crazy because that's just the way it was. I mean, these like old guys would be marrying these like 18-year-olds and shit, like, ugh.
That's what I say. Like, if you read the Regency and Victorian type books, they're 18 in the season, right? Or 19 or 20. Like, they're young, these women getting married, but probably marriage more for stability and a home and a life.
Yeah,
not necessarily
your reasons for marriage were
love.
not really based around love, typically.
Yes, which is probably why those classics that do have love, like Jane Eyre, would resonate with us, right? Or Pride and Prejudice. Yeah, they stick out. Okay, let's talk enemies to lovers.
Yes, that one is my favorite. I think I was listening to some writers talk one time about enemies to lovers, and they were talking about how there's just like so much feeling there already, so much emotion and hatred. It's so much more like you're actually feeling something rather than just indifference, like you don't really care. And it might be a way to mask actually other emotions that might be under the surface, like attraction. Like there's already just so much emotion. There's got to be something else going on. And then I really love like reading it, writing it, that when they have like the kind of the mean banter, it just suddenly morphs into flirting. And then the characters are like, wait, are we flirting? And they're like, what's happening?
What is this? I thought we were enemies.
And I think it's so cute.
I agree with you, and I am a sucker for a good enemies to lover book, but they have to be done well because the reason that they're enemies needs to be well explained. Like, I think rivals, like you were saying, that's a great one because they're oftentimes rivals, but they care for the other person. Enemies is hard. If there's enough of a reason in their backstory to really dislike each other, somehow they have to get over that, and that's hard to do and can be poorly done. But that's what makes those stories
like I don't want to give a bunch of details, but there is a story I'm working on that it's both enemies to lovers and rivals to lovers. So I've been thinking about that and playing with it, and like that's part of the story. Christy knows which one it is.
I do.
It's like part of the whole character arc, and the theme is that they kind of have to get over that thing that's in the past that's making them enemies.
Is it easy for them to get over it?
Easy?
It takes the whole story. Of course, it's not easy.
It takes the whole story. I think it's gonna. Yeah, and be a part of the theme.
Yeah. And I mean, that's real life. It's like real life has people do things to hurt each other, and you have to get past that. So.
Or like maybe people are hanging on to the past and people have changed, you know?
Yeah, that's great.
And I think closely related to those would be opposites attract, which we mentioned before. Because I think oftentimes if you are enemies or rivals, it's because you're really opposite personalities. And like they rub each other the wrong way, but at the same time, they're actually like perfect for each other because they're opposite.
Yes.
They just balance out each other, and you know, real love is like that.
I was gonna say, are you two opposite from your spouses?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are. Yeah, probably.
Well, I mean, yeah, we have a lot in common, but I think it's like personalities. I think there's so many ways we're just like totally opposite.
Yep, that's how we are too. You're the right fit for each other, which is why
there's like a Spanish term. It's like mi media naranja. It's like the other half of the orange that like there's you cut an orange and it just fits together one way. I think it's cute.
Oh, I like that. Cute. I've never heard that. So, Brother's Best Friend is probably my favorite. I don't know why I love it. I don't have an older brother. My brother's like 6 years younger, so that would have like never flown. Like, that's disgusting. But I love that story. I just think there's something about the proximity of growing up, knowing the brother's friends, and then having that shift from, oh, you were a cute little girl, to, oh, wow, I'm seeing you differently. So,
yes,
I love
that's one of my favorites. But I have 2 older brothers, so I had crushes on like all of their friends in high school. And I'm sure I was, and probably still am, seen as like the annoying little sister. But I like fake relationships, but I know you hate, Kelly.
I despise them.
I know it is 100% unbelievable, but how can like 90% of Christmas movies be wrong?
Yeah.
Like...
You're right. Hallmark is often accused of being the gold standard for reality.
But yeah, I don't know why. I love it, and I will watch it every single time, even though I know it's completely implausible. And should I ever find myself single, I would never fake date somebody. Like, it would just, I don't even know. I don't know where this trope came from that somebody thought, we should do that. It's totally believable, because it's not.
I think it could be believable in a romantic suspense book where you have to pretend you're dating someone to stay safe. It could probably even be believable in a fantasy story where it's like you're in some new world and you need to stay safe.
You don't want to get executed.
Yeah, but I can't wrap my mind around how can it be plausible in like just a romance story. Like, that makes no sense.
Okay, so to defend it, there is one. I know we're going to talk about books a little later, but it's a YA book. It's actually pretty popular. It's called To All the Boys I've Loved Before.
I've seen it. I read it.
Isn't it a Netflix movie?
Yeah, they made it into a movie, which the movie did a good job. So if you've seen it, the book, you know, either way, they're both really good. So basically this young teen, she had written these letters to, I'm going to like remember. I'm going to mess up the premise. Definitely. It was so long ago I read it, but she wrote these secret letters to all the boys that she had a crush on at different points in her life. And then she hid them away, but her younger sister got mad at her and mailed them out to all the people. And then, so the one, she has to deal with the fallout of that for the rest of the book. But then I honestly cannot remember the motivation, which is, I know what we're talking about here, why she ends up fake dating like this popular guy. I think it might be to like make his girlfriend jealous. And then she like has her own motivation, which might be to get with somebody else. I think that's what it is. It's to make the other person jealous. But of course they end up falling in love. But I loved that story because that, like, spoiler alert, that wasn't really the main, like, it was the main plot, but it wasn't really what the story was about. It was more about her character journey and, like, dealing with her loss of her mom and her sister who's moved off to college. Like, it really was a great character story that I did not expect in, like, a fun YA.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so I think that's maybe why I liked it. Like, it was just a cute element to the story.
So it can be done well. Christy, do you have any good fake dating that you like that aren't Christmas?
I feel like Christmas kind of owns that a little bit.
Why, I wonder?
Huh. Well, I think, too, Christmas is the only time that I'm willing to watch those movies. Other times of the year I'm watching, like, not really horror. I don't really watch horror. I don't even know what I watch. I don't watch that much. No, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I would have to look into that.
I know. I'd have to think about it, too. I'm sure I've read some, but I just can't think of them off the top of my head. Okay, so, I did want to say, one of my very favorite Brother's Best Friend was Dani Pettrey's Shattered. It was so good. It's her second book in Alaska, her Alaska Courage series. And then I loved Becky Wade's Friends to Lovers, Sweet on You. She did a really good job with that. But in that one of the characters was in love with the other one. So one knew he was in love with the heroine. I don't know that I see a lot of Friends to Lovers where they're both thinking they're just friends and that kind of transitions. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Can I say one that I hate, or we're going to do that later, aren't we? Never mind. I'll wait. Continue.
Trope that you hate or book that you hate?
Trope.
Oh, tell us. Oh.
No, it's fine.
Well,
I don't know if it's a trope or not. I always hate it when, I don't even know what it's even called. It's when someone is way more in love than the other one. Like, I don't like that. That whole power balance. I don't mind who falls first. Is that what it's called?
It's called He Falls First.
Yeah, I just don't like it when one of them's like head over heels, like over the top in love.
It's like the
Because I'm
amount.
like, that's, yes. Like, I don't mind if you fall first, but don't be like crazy about it. Like, I want it to be more even balance. And I always hate whenever it's like the girl falls for the guy and then there's no like redeeming qualities in the girl. So it's just kind of like, he's like, I'm like, why are you falling for her? And now I'm completely off on a tangent.
Oh, well, sometimes it's like, it was kind of like an Elizabeth and Darcy thing where the guy is just like so brooding and unlikable. You're like, okay, give me something here to make me understand why. Like, I was reading this one and I just didn't even finish it. He was just so, like, he was just mean. And it just wasn't, even in his point of view, I was like, you're not relatable. You're just grumpy and mean. And it wasn't not,
Is this your Byronic hero that I had to look up what that meant?
Oh, yeah, maybe. Honestly, maybe it's like people trying to do the Byronic hero and they're like not succeeding. Yeah, so that's kind of like the bad boy, honestly. And it comes from Lord Byron. He was a real person. That's who it's named after. But we think of like Wuthering Heights and Heathcliff. He's kind of like the first bad boy, I guess. He's like not great. Well, honestly, no one's relationship in that story is very good. But it's kind of, just... And it doesn't always have to be someone who's like actually a bad boy. Like it just might be they have like this persona or they're perceived that way, or usually they're quieter. It's usually the guy, obviously. Like they're quieter, they're more brooding, they're really thoughtful. They're not always gonna smile and be like happy and social. They're kind of loners. So Rochester and Jane Eyre is kind of that way. Yeah.
I like that concept, like the bad boy. I don't necessarily always see him as the broody character, although I do sometimes. But I like it because there's more of a chance for redemption with it. Like if you start a book and a character is just like happy and perfect, well then how do they grow and change? Whereas if you have the bad boy who's got like the demons of his past to kind of overcome, I think you have more change and redemption from it.
I think I like the lovable rogue better. That's the next one.
Yeah. Like Mr. Wickham, who would be like a lovable rogue.
That'd be like Han Solo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like they're very attractive and like suave, but they're like always kind of, might be like an anti-hero like that, or...
Yeah.
Like a little cocky, but still lovable.
Yeah. Or like in Jane Austen, they kind of disregard social norms.
And these aren't tropes. These are favorite character
I would
types
say they're character types, but I guess it might fall under trope. Like, I think
this
if
be
you
your
look
micro, micro trope / characters.
Yeah, I would say so. Some of the other ones that we would see, Grumpy Sunshine.
I like that one.
I like it when it's switched and Grumpy is the girl and Sunshine is the guy.
Why do you like that?
I think it's just not quite what you expect, because I think often when you do have, or someone's trying to have like the guy be the quote unquote grumpy one and be like the Byronic hero, it's just, I don't know. It's just more what you expect, and girls, just generally speaking, tend to be like more smiley and very like chipper and outgoing, and personally, like, I'm not very outgoing. And like, you know, I might feel like socially awkward and be like super quiet. So I really like that when it's switched, like that type of girl isn't always seen as super likable. And when it's switched, it just, I don't know, just subverts your expectations, I guess.
Yeah.
See, Courtney Walsh wrote The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley, and that one is kind of like that. It's like where she's kind of like your nerdy scientist, introverted, like doesn't want to talk to anybody kind of thing. And then she kind of reads this article about 30 ways to be happy when she turns 30, I think. And so she decides, like, I'm going to prove this wrong. Because, no, this is not going to make me happy by doing these things. And then she does it, and it's really a good book. I love that book. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit like Grumpy Sunshine. What everyone else called? She meets is sunshine. It's The Happy Life of Isadora Bentley.
Okay.
But yeah, I really like that one.
What is Manic Pixie Dream Girl?
Yeah, I never heard that one.
Really? Okay, I'm going to start listing movies, and you're going to totally know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so it's basically like the girl is... Really, the story's like about the guy. And it's usually from the guy's perspective. It's all about like his character journey. And the girls who he usually falls in love with, she's kind of untouchable. Often they don't even get together in the end. But she's very beautiful. She's like a dream girl in that way. But might be like kind of crazy or offbeat or different. Sometimes in these stories that like you can do like a whole commentary on like how they're used, but it kind of sometimes it can kind of glorify mental illness in some ways I think are kind of unhealthy and stuff like that. And some criticisms are like the girl's just very flat and she just exists to help the guy on his journey. And but at the same time I think the character's really interesting. So I once taught a lesson about it with some of F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing. So if you think about like The Great Gatsby, Daisy is kind of a manic pixie dream girl for Gatsby. Let's see. Have you guys read or heard of? Oh my God, is it Perks of Being a Wallflower? Is one.
I've seen it. I mean, I've seen like of the movie. Haven't looked at it. I was thinking of Mad Love, and that's back from like what the 90s with Drew Barrymore and Chris O'Donnell, because she kind of has like a mental illness, and then but they kind of fall in love, and like they kind of run off because he's trying to like, you don't have to go back to this mental hospital, you know, kind of thing. But then like at the end, he kind of realizes like, oh, like this isn't right. But you know, like I think I don't even know how it ended, but it was kind of like that. Like it was one of those.
So there's so many. There's like 500 Days of Summer. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
I do remember that one vaguely.
Yeah. Almost Famous.
Yeah.
This is a book too, but Looking for Alaska, definitely a manic pixie dream girl. Also Paper Towns by John Green. I think he does a really good job though, like Looking for Alaska. Like she's a manic pixie dream girl, but it's not like overly romanticized like her problems that she has, and it is like one of my favorite books for sure.
I need this HEA though. I need my happily ever after.
I know. They're not often happily ever after.
I have seen so many people in like the romance book world say if it's not a happily ever after or a HFN, happily for now, then it's not a romance story. It's
interesting.
Like
so like maybe it's not even really. Is she a romance character type character? I mean, there's often romance in. I mean, the whole thing is the guy falls in love with her, right? Like, yeah.
I think the majority of romance readers would say it has to have a happily ever after to be a romance story. So it could be women's fiction. It could be whatever other genre.
I disagree.
Do you disagree?
You got it. Well,
yeah, I think I disagree.
I feel like the more like that. Well, I mean, Romeo and Juliet, is that classified as romance or tragedy?
Ooh.
I mean, well, with Shakespeare,
clearly they don't end up together.
Although some people say it's a comedy.
And I like characters that have like the law enforcement background, the protector hero. I want the strong heroine who's capable, like not the weak one. I want the heroine who is like good at whatever her job is. Of course, I like the outdoor Western setting. So those are some of my like micro tropes or characters that I like. I mean, we've already talked about some of the books that do these tropes well, but do you all have any examples of books that you think really kind of like represent a specific trope well?
Forced proximity, as we know that I like. It's fun, like getting snowed in. And Jessica Wakefield has a Christmas box anthology. And in the second book, it was Risking Christmas. These two characters are snowed in and they cook. Look, I don't know what it is about a cooking scene. I hate cooking. I don't want anybody in my kitchen. The dogs, the kids, my husband, nobody. Zero romance is going on in my kitchen. But I love cooking scenes in books. That might be a microtrope. Is that a microtrope?
I would think about,
Yeah, cooking. Yeah.
So it's the forced proximity plus forced proximity of being in a tiny kitchen. So that is one of my favorites.
I'm not sure if this one is forced proximity or not, but I really enjoyed Flatshare. And I don't normally read contemporary romance, but that was one I read. It is general market, so look up your spice level of it. But so basically this girl breaks up with her boyfriend. Of course, she's living with him, so she has nowhere to go. So she takes this flat share. So it's in England, so she rents an apartment with this other guy. He's a night nurse, so he has it from like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. She has it from 8 a.m. or whatever, opposite, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Yeah. And then, so they've like never met, and they just leave each other post-it notes. So maybe it's kind of like turning that trope on its head because it is forced proximity, but yet they're not actually physically with each other.
Together. So I read that and I liked it. I think of that more as it's like the you've got mail hidden identity almost. I would say hidden identity is a trope where you fall in love not knowing who the other person is and then
in a way
fall in love with them in person.
And the Christian version of that would be Becca Kinzer's Dear Henry, Love Edith. So they kind of do the same thing. They're sharing a house, but they'd never met. And due to their names, Henry and Edith, they both just kind of assume the other person's a geriatric. So it's like they see each other out and about in town and are attracted to each other. But like these things keep happening where they don't actually like meet. And so it's really funny because like the whole town people like know that they're living together, you know, quote unquote in sin, but they each, but they haven't met. And then, so it has a lot of like funny moments, but it was really cute.
So I would say Emma St. Clair. I think I mentioned her for some other, maybe Clean Reads Fall, something or other. She just writes like really lighthearted books, but she had a whole series on love cliches. And I think every trope that you would think of, she threw in there. Like she had an age gap one. She had a book on, I think, brother's best friend or sister's best friend. She had, I think, friends to lovers. She had them all. So she did a really good job at like, I'm going to pick a cliche and write a book on that one. So cool. That was kind of cute. Yeah.
Well, so I have one that's also maybe turning the trope on its head a little bit. I would say it's like Manic Pixie Dream Boy.
Ooh,
This book is actually independently published, but it was one of my favorite books of the year of 2024. I gave it 5 stars. It's called All the Yellow Posies. So it's set in the 1920s, and basically just a young woman meets a young man. He's dealing with trauma from World War I. So he's also very like whimsical and funny, and they have this really great chemistry, and it's beautifully written. So it just kind of shows him dealing with that and like the fallout of everything that he's dealing with. No more spoilers, but I think it turns the trope on its head a little bit because it is the guy, and it doesn't over romanticize again like the mental illness and like PTSD he's dealing with.
Does it have a happy ending or like a kind of sad ending?
Sad things happen in the book, but you're satisfied by the ending.
You're satisfied. Okay. Yeah. I'm happy with a satisfied ending. Okay. Any other book examples that you all think really shows some of these tropes well?
I think one for more like the character type, the lovable rogue. One I enjoyed is A Lady's Guide to Scandal. So this is general market, but it is clean, and it's a Regency era romance. And if you're a Jane Austen lover, you will definitely find just little nods to Austen and that whole era in it. But it's kind of, let's see. I don't want to give it away, but I love the character of the lovable rogue in it, and I think she does a really good job of making me root for him. And I just did not know how it was going to end up until the very end.
Ooh, that's fun.
Basically, the premise is that the young woman marries, she's like very young, like I want to say she's like 17 or something, and she marries this old guy, and then the book takes place 10 years later. He's passed away, and she actually somehow through a different course of events actually inherited his money, which wasn't very often that happened back then, but it's contingent upon she cannot get into a scandal, so she has to be very socially proper. Well, now she runs in with this brother and a sister who are kind of, I think they're supposed to be kind of like they're modeled after Lord Byron and someone that he would like hang around with who are both writers. I can't remember if it's his sister or not. So it's his brother and sister in the book. And anyway, so now she's like, oh no, they're scandalous, but I'm hanging out with them. And so anyways, but she's going to lose her fortune if she is not proper.
She's included in that.
Yeah.
And let's talk about Divine Rivals, because you recommended that to me. It was so good. So good.
That's a really good one for Rivals to Lovers, especially.
Because series or standalone?
It's a duology.
Two of them. Yeah. It's fantasy, but the two main characters work together, and then they have a rivalry. It's good. And
all I wrote was Divine Rivals is just unparalleled. Yeah. How to describe it. It's just, I don't even know.
It's so good. But it was set, so it's fantasy, but it was kind of set, it was either World War I or World War II was like kind of the...
That's what I pictured, yeah. Like World War I, World War II, just like in England or something. Even though it said it was a different world, that's just kind of what it described. But the fantasy, it's a really good gateway fantasy book because the fantasy elements are so light. Like, half the time I was like, oh, yeah, I guess this is a fantasy book. Like, it's not a bunch of weird, like, names you have to remember and, like, magic systems. So it's not like that at all. It's just a little more whimsical, basically.
It was good.
I have one. Now, I'm not a giant fan of Marriage of Convenience. I think historical novels can kind of pull this off, but contemporary, I feel like it's really difficult. Marriage is a pretty big step. But Tony Shiloh had a good one where this woman with diabetes lost her insurance, like through her job, whatever. And so her best friend, so there comes the best friend trope too. Her best friend had really good insurance and he had like 2 girls that, you know, he needed help taking care of. So she was basically like, okay, like, let's get married. I'll use your insurance and I'll help you with these kids kind of thing. And so like, to me, I was like, I had to deal with insurance on a daily basis. So I can understand the headache and frustration with it. So I was like, you know, get behind that because they have history. They're not like 2 complete strangers marrying, you know, and then they both have like kind of a mutual agreement.
A strong motivation.
So that one worked for me.
Marriage of Convenience in modern days is more plausible to me if people have kids. Like, I mean,
we need help.
Kind of. This is... My husband does this like day in, day out. So the concept of like what happens when you die is a very like comfortable one for us. But the reality is like I could totally see if someone loses their spouse and they have multiple kids, they're like, forget it. I don't need marriage. I just need a partner. I need someone to help.
Need some help.
And then they fall in love. So maybe I'll write that story sometime, but I don't know if I could.
Which is kind of like the nanny trope, isn't it? Semi.
Yeah.
Totally. Totally the nanny trope. Yep. I think that's true. Single parent, we didn't even talk about that, but I think single parent
character type
is another character type that's pretty common. Yeah. Okay, did we cover tropes that we don't like pretty well?
Well, I also said the trope I doesn't like, which Marriage of Convenience, even though I just talked about it. But Melissa Coslin has one, Dangerous Beauty. And it's not really believable that they get married. Like, it's really a kind of a hard sell to me. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get through it. And the rest of the book was phenomenal. Love the rest of the book. So it's kind of like I just had to take that leap of disbelief. And then it was fine. I'm like, it's fiction. It could work. It's fine.
For me, I think Friends to Lovers, I'm just kind of ambivalent about it. Like, I've never really read one that I just was like, oh, so romantic. Like, just there's got to be a spark. And I think with Enemies to Lovers, there's a spark there. Like, they have a chemistry. Yeah. But Friends to Lovers, just, I don't know.
See, and my husband and I were friends for a long time before we got together. I mean, I think there was always a spark there, and we always had an attraction. But we worked in an office together and we're friends, so those
office
are always
romance.
Yeah, it's like office romance.
Totally office romance. We did not work for the same company, I would like to say, but we were friends for a long time. We did a lot as friends together and had this kind of unknown. So I like the Friends to Lovers because I think it can be kind of
it's more realistic.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to say I don't love the love triangle. Like, I don't mind. Okay, I take that back. I don't mind if there's a love triangle. But whichever guy gets left behind, I don't want him to be nice. I don't want to feel bad for him. I want him to be a total jerk. Like, I don't want to feel bad for him. I don't like it when it's like a nice guy and you're like, oh, but what about this guy? Like, nope. I want it to be like the Hallmark city boy. You ditch him, go with the country boy with the farm. Like, that's what I want. He's got to be a jerk.
But that's not really a love triangle. That's just more like the conflict, I feel like. That's just, he's like, you all know he's not going to end up with the girl, but.
Yes, but see, now see, what was it, Twilight? That's the only love triangle I can think of. And I'm like, I kind of like Jacob better.
First guy always gets the girl. That's like, I guess, another
That's
trope.
probably true. Yeah, no, that's probably true.
Yeah, that is true.
I guess there's kind of a, now that we're talking about vampires, it's sort of in Vampire Diaries. Not that I've seen watched like one season. Okay. But actually, in that one, I root for the bad boy, the Byronic hero.
Yeah. Sometimes you do. But I think a love triangle, like, I like it. I'm not going to say it's more realistic, but, I mean, I know, like, when you're out dating, or back when I was, like, there would be tons of people I would go on a date with. I'm like, you are, like, great, you're perfect, and we've got no chemistry. So, like, I think a lot of times there are really great people out there that you don't have chemistry with, and that's kind of, like, what happens a lot. So, I don't know.
I also don't like love at first sight.
Yeah.
I don't like
It
that
doesn't
because I'm
write
like, I want
well.
the slow falling love. There's lust at first sight. There's not love at first sight.
Yeah.
Like, I like the slow falling love. I love the movie montage where they're falling in love. Like, that's what I like.
Yeah, I love the slow burn.
At first sight's a little unrealistic in life anyway. Like, who does that? Who falls in love at
Although,
first sight?
I've got some anecdotes about that. We have a big discussion about that in my class when we do Romeo and Juliet. And so then I ask them, do you believe in love on first sight? And then we have a bunch of debates about it.
Teenagers might.
I would love to find someone who has a love at first sight story. So if any of our listeners have a love at first sight story, or we'll post it on social media, I really want to know. I want to hear a love at first sight.
My in-laws would say that it was love at first sight.
Really?
That's what I've been told.
Have them tell us the story.
Well, basically, like, he saw her in church and was like, let's go on a date. And like 23 days later, or was it 21? 23 days later, they were engaged.
Oh, my word.
So, I mean, I don't know. Pretty quick. It was,
And they
love
are
at first
still
sight.
married all these years later. Wow.
45.
I could not make up my mind that fast.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so are any tropes overdone?
Yes. Absolutely. I don't like the miscommunication one. And I hate the one where there's like an ex arriving on scene and he kisses the lead and then the current love interest walks in and just runs out and leaves. Like, if that happened to me, I would be demanding an answer like ASAP. Like, there'd be no running. There would only be like swift confrontation.
Okay, that's fair. I think, yeah, we hear as we explain our opinions, it definitely seems like oftentimes our opinions are such because they're poorly done. Like, these tropes are poorly executed. So it's like, yeah, how bad can miscommunication be that you can't make it work out? So that makes sense.
I mean, if you're in a relationship and you can't communicate, then you're probably already doomed. I mean, let's
I
be
think
real.
it has to be a short-lived miscommunication. Like, I don't want to give spoilers, but it was in a book that we talked about earlier that you said you read, Kelly, where at the end she like gets kissed by her ex, and then there's a reason that the other guy sees it. Like, he wasn't there. He like saw it like live streamed or something on social media, and then they couldn't contact each other because of something he was doing at the time that was really important. He couldn't have his phone, and it was like,
So vague.
But it was like very short lived. Like, it was like immediately resolved. I
Quick
feel like
miscommunication.
Yeah.
That
the
I'm
whole
okay
story.
with. But yeah, if it's like some huge blow up over something like a minor miscommunication, then no, I don't love that.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Krista? Do you think anything is overdone right now?
I didn't write anything down. Just maybe like, I don't know. I just feel like everything's very like overprotective, like alpha male. And I don't know. Is that a trope, a character type? I just don't know if I love
That's
that.
overdone.
Like, it's got to be a balance. Like, it's okay for a guy. I think guys ought to be protective of women, but it's like, I don't know. It's just like too alpha male, like, stifling. I don't know. That's just the impression I get.
He's got to have some brains too. He can't just
Like,
be brawn.
Yeah, exactly.
And I want the girl to be able to help out too.
Yeah.
I think what happens is someone does a great trope and it'll be a really successful book, and then a bunch of people bandwagon on that, and then they try to do those tropes, and they don't oftentimes do them as well. So I don't know that I have an example specifically of a particular trope that's overdone, but I do feel like you get in phases where you see some of these books come out and you're like, this is the same as every other book that's come out, and this is not unique anymore.
Yeah.
So what about any tropes that really aren't socially acceptable or maybe seem outdated?
Age gap. Can we revisit that one? That's not socially acceptable anymore.
I love the age gap. I love when I find people that are like, I'm 8 years from my spouse. I don't know. I think it's so fascinating.
I think it's realistic though. Like, it definitely happens in real life. What do you like about it, Kelly?
What do I like about it? I just think I like it's the same reason I like Brother's Best Friend. It's like someone looking at someone else in a different lens than they would have. Now, I'm going to sound very traditionalist. I like the male to be older than the female. Like, I don't like reverse age gap, personally. What else? Anything else you think is maybe not socially acceptable, or if it were to happen in real life, you'd be like, okay, let's hold our horses on that a little bit.
See, I don't know if this falls in with Chris's Byronic guy, but I don't like where the guy's a jerk and the girl just can't stay away. Like, I get super annoyed. Like, have some respect. Like, this guy's bad news. Like, mistreatment of women, belittling is not flirty. Like, it's off-putting. Like, I don't think that's a good example.
That's like that one I didn't finish. It was just like, why are you even attracted to each other? This guy is so mean. But
I think that's more general market than Christian market.
Maybe. But I think,
and I don't like the super rich billionaire trope.
Oh, I love that one.
Now, I think it's different from like the rescue Cinderella one, but I'd rather read about a physical rescue than like a monetary one.
I just think it's fun to suspend belief. Is that the expression?
Yeah.
Suspend belief for a while. I'm never going to be a billionaire. I'm never going to know billionaires.
It's like, what's the word? Wish fulfillment.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
What would that life be like? But it's not realistic. But it's kind of fun to dream, or like dream through someone else's eyes.
Well, I think I disagree with the first part, because I think the bad boy trope is never going to die. But it just has to be done well. Like, I mean, like we already talked about,
true.
Like the lovable rogue, and I think, like I said, A Lady's Guide to Scandal does it really well, because it's like, oh, what are the layers? Is he really the way people think that he is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I do think one problem in fiction sometimes is some things are so sensationalized. The average good guy is never sensationalized, right? Like, we always make our heroes and heroines like these complex layers with an extreme past or this extreme hang up. But like most of the people we meet out there aren't that way. So sometimes I think we don't necessarily give the good guy enough credit in a story. So I agree. If I had a daughter, I'd be like, don't be looking for the bad boy. Look for the
look for the stable one.
Rough around the edges, but has a good heart inside. Yeah, the stable one. Yeah.
Maybe you guys haven't seen this. Have you seen this reel that's like with Lord of the Rings? And it's got the like, who you think you want to marry when you're like a teenager, and it's like Legolas. And then when you're a young woman, who do you want to marry? And it's like Aragorn, like crashing through the doors, all like sweaty from battle. And then the last one's like, who do you actually want to marry when you're like marriageable age? And it's like, just Sam Gamgee. He cooks for you. He encourages you.
That's true.
Like,
I haven't seen that one.
The real guy.
It's the real man. No, but my husband found TikTok like 2 weeks ago, and now all he sends me are the real, the videos of like marriage. The woman and her, Amazon boxes piled up in the garage while the man is doing what. Anyway, we fulfill all those stereotypes right now.
Have you seen, I don't know, is this outdated or just one that's not used very much? Like in Sleepless in Seattle, where whole time they don't meet till the very end, but you're just kind of knowing, like you seeing them separately, and you're seeing how they're perfect for one another.
And see, that is such a good movie, but it's one of those things that now, anytime I write a story and the people don't meet in chapter 1, people are like, they have to meet in chapter 1.
Well, I know, and sometimes I'm just like,
but it worked really for that.
Is it really best for the story for them to meet in chapter 1? Like, or is it just
not for mine normally?
So anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
Outdated. It just has to, again, be done well. And it depends on your goals. I was talking to Christy about this, about her book the other day. It's like, you can write whatever story you want to write, the story of your heart. But if your goal is to get your story published, then you have to kind of hit those marks that whoever your publisher is, like, you have to kind of do the checks and balances they have. And that's just a personal decision. But like, I know if I want to write a book for one particular publisher, it has to look a certain way. But if I'm looking at a different publisher, it's going to look totally different. So then ultimately we get that decision. Do we write a book for the market, or do we write a book the way we want to write a book? That's the decision you make as you're on your own.
And see, I have a story that I was working on one time, and they meet in the beginning, and then they're kind of like parallel until they would meet again at the end. And I could never figure out, like, no one would read that, because the whole bulk of the story, they're not actually together.
Yeah, I'm having that problem with a different story idea I have. So I have to figure out how to make them meet or not,
how to make them meet together.
Yeah.
But maybe, is it still considered a romance? Is Sleepless in Seattle considered a romance? Or is it like a friendship film? Because there's like her and her friend, him and his friend, that are kind of like bolstering each other and helping them make decisions. Which is funny because there's one kiss in it at the end.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I don't know what it would be considered. And that's a movie, so, and a 90s movie at that, right? We've got.
Can we talk about, like, side note, what happened to all those 90s rom-coms? Like, I was reading an article about this. It's like the death of the rom-com.
It was Nora Ephron. She was like the queen of it, and then she passed away.
Well, I was reading about maybe, like, because people don't go to movie theaters as much anymore, and
I mean, that's true. Because everything streams within like a week. So why am I going to pay to a movie theater when I can sit in the comfort of my home and watch a movie?
Yeah.
I'm going to see Flight Risk tomorrow night, and I'm really excited because it looks like it has the suspense that I like.
Oh, so is it a is it romantic or
thriller?
I don't even think so. More like probably action thriller. Mark Wahlberg's in it. That's all I know. But it looks like it has the mountain outdoor component that I like. So I'm going to
just say that
long story
I
short.
will forever call him Marky Mark in my head. I will never call him Mark Wahlberg. Terrible. I don't think people go to, I think Marvel MCU, I think it ruined people going to the movies because I would only go to the movies for like the big explosive scenes. Yeah. That's what I want to be surrounded by. And like, if it's just a love story, like, I can wait to see that
like,
one.
you don't want to see Dune at home. You want to see Dune in theaters.
I don't want to see Dune anytime. I have watched it at home. Oh my gosh, it's so long.
It's
so long.
It's so beautiful.
I haven't even seen it.
Don't waste your time. It's so long. It's not what you would like, Kelly.
I'll just take your word for it. Okay, we have Rabbit Trailed, which I love. This is our talk all about love and romance books and movies, some of them. Okay, so my very last question is, why do we love romance books? As we're in this month of love, highlighting romance books, why do we love them? And I will say, I love romance books because there are certain expectations set when you pick up a romance book. One of them is a happily ever after or happily for now. There's no death of a main character. There's no unknown fate. So I pick up a romance book because I know it's guaranteed. And I know within that, the tropes are like familiar blankets. Like we know the basic idea, but I'm always curious how it'll be played out in that particular story from start to finish. So it's like I like the familiarity and the comfort, but I like the unique spin on each book as well. How about you two?
Yeah. I think I just love the spark, like the chemistry between the characters. Like it doesn't, I don't mean like spice necessarily, but just like what's the chemistry? What makes them tick? How do they bring out the best in one another? How do they bring out the worst in one another? How do they help each other grow? And that's really what true friendship is, and that's what true love is. I think there's just so much good character story in romance. You know, when stories are just physical attraction, a love story is just about the physical attraction. I don't care at all. Like there used to be a little bit of that, but like it's really about the people.
Yep.
But kissing books are nice too.
I was going to say, I think falling in love is just the best. Like, who doesn't want to fall? Like, it's one of those universal experiences. I kind of feel like either you've been in love or you're in love or you're like one or the other. So I just think falling in love is the best. There's the exploration. There's the funny, awkward moments, the sweet moments, the surprising moments, the kissing moments. And I love the anticipation that builds up to like all the near miss kisses or interrupted kisses until like you get to like the kiss. Like that is my favorite part. Like every time I'm like, not yet. Yes. And so, and then of course I'm like leafing through the book and I'm just like, okay, we're like 3/4 of the way through. Where is this first kiss? Like it needs to happen.
That's a micro.
So yeah.
The interrupted kiss.
That's true.
Interrupted kiss. I like it.
Well, thank you for joining us today on our literary journey. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Lit Ladies Pod and leave a review on your podcast platform. Today we'll end with a quote from Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Maud Montgomery. And this is a quote I had at my wedding. Perhaps after all, romance did not come into one's life with pomp and blare. Perhaps it crept to one side like an old friend through quiet ways.